For 20 years I swept their floors, arranged flowers in the sanctuary, prayed with grieving mothers, fed the hungry, packed Bibles into boxes no one else wanted to lift. Every Sunday I walked in quiet. Same coat, same Bible, same pew, third row from the front left side. It didn't have my name on it, but it knew me. That seat had held my tears, my hallelujahs, my tired bones after funeral dinners and prayer vigils that went too long. But last Sunday, I walked in just like I always had. Only this time a woman in pearls was sitting there. She didn't even look unsure. She looked comfortable, like she belonged. When I paused, she smiled sweetly and leaned over. "They said I could sit here," she whispered. I looked to the usher I'd known for years. He just shrugged. No apology, no nod of respect. Just politics dressed up in perfume. And you know what? I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for my seat back. I just stood there for a moment. Took one long breath. And then I turned around. Walked out the back door. Quietly, like I'd always come in. I didn't make a scene. I just made a decision. Now if you're still here with me, thank you, truly. It means more than I can say. Before I go any further, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Are you in your kitchen? Sitting in the car waiting on someone? Maybe laying down, just needing to hear a voice that feels like yours? Well, I'm glad you pressed play. Because this story, it ain't just mine. It belongs to anybody who's ever given their time, their heart, their best years to a place or a people, and still ended up pushed to the side like they never mattered. Have you ever felt that? Like you were invisible in a room you helped build? Like your kindness was only valued as long as it stayed quiet? If you have, I want you to share that below. Leave a comment. Tell me about the job you gave your soul to, the family you sacrificed for, the church you never missed, only to be forgotten when someone richer, louder, or newer came along. This space here, this one we're in together right now, it's not for judgment. It's for truth, it's for healing. Because let me be clear, this story I'm telling, it's not about revenge. It's not about drama. It's about remembrance. Remembering who I was, remembering what I gave. And finally, remembering that I never needed applause to know I was worthy. So stay with me, baby. You're not alone here. And neither am I. I didn't always know that church would become my second home. But after my husband passed, I needed somewhere to go. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere that wouldn't expect me to smile when I didn't feel like smiling. That's when I found the little church on Cypress Hill. It wasn't much to look at back then. Peeling white paint on the outside, a front sign with faded letters that leaned a little to the left. The pews creaked when you sat down, and creaked even louder when you got up. But to me, it felt like shelter, not from the rain but from the silence that had filled my house. The first time I walked in, no one knew my name. And that was all right. I wasn't looking for attention. I was looking for peace. I found a seat near the front, third row on the left. It just felt right. Not too close, not too far. Close enough to hear the pastor without needing the microphone. I didn't join the choir, but I'd stay after rehearsals and help wipe down chairs. I wasn't in any ministry group, but I'd set up flowers every Saturday evening, real ones if I could afford it, plastic when I couldn't. I didn't carry a title, but I carried everything else. Boxes of hymnals, bags of rice for the food pantry, trays of chicken salad for bereaved families. I held the hands of mothers who buried their sons. I prayed in the hallway with teenagers who felt too ashamed to go inside. And when the offering tray came around, I gave. Quietly. Always anonymously. I didn't want recognition. I just wanted to help. And week after week, year after year, that third pew on the left was waiting for me. It didn't have my name carved into it, but it knew my weight. It knew my quiet grief. It held the parts of me that had nowhere else to rest. That little church watched me grow older. It watched me go from freshly grieving widow to someone who could smile again. Not because life got easier, but because that place gave me a reason to keep waking up on Sunday mornings. But even sacred places can change. Even pews that remember you can forget. And that's where the story starts to shift. For a long time, nothing changed. The church stayed small, the potlucks were simple, and the only microphone we had sometimes gave out halfway through the sermon. But we were family. Then one year, the old pastor retired. A younger one came in, fresh out of seminary, full of energy, full of ideas. And at first, I was hopeful. New life, new vision. We all clapped when he arrived. But it didn't take long before things started shifting. Not all at once, just little things, small enough that you almost missed them. First came the big screen TVs, one on each side of the altar. Said it was for better engagement. Next came the new branded offering envelopes, blue and gold, with our church logo in shiny foil. Then the sermon started sounding more like presentations. Less about grace, more about growth. The messages felt rehearsed. And the altar? It turned into more of a stage. The choir had to audition now. No more showing up and blending your voice with the others. And suddenly, if your name wasn't on the monthly donor list, it felt like your presence didn't count as much. One Sunday, they gave a round of applause for a man who donated $10,000 to the building fund. They clapped. Loud. People stood up. He hadn't even been a member for more than 3 months. Meanwhile, Sister Ethel had been cooking in that church kitchen for 30 years and never once heard her name from the pulpit. I stayed quiet, kept bringing flowers, kept tithing. It wasn't my style, but I believed in the mission. Or at least, I thought I did. Because I told myself that the message was still what mattered. That Jesus was the same, even if the walls were shinier and the bulletins came with QR codes now. But deep down, I started to feel the shift. Not just in the church, but in me. Like something was slowly backing me out of the room I helped fill. Still, I stayed. Because when you've built something with your hands, it's not easy to just walk away. Even when it starts to forget who helped build it. It was a Sunday like any other. The kind where I woke up early, made my tea, and laid out the same navy blue coat I always wore to service. That coat had been with me for years. It still held the scent of rose oil and old wood polish from the church benches. I picked up my Bible, the same one with the worn-out spine and the notes in the margins, and headed out the door like I had done for 2 decades. The parking lot was fuller than usual. I remember thinking maybe it was homecoming Sunday and no one told me, but I smiled anyway. It always warmed my heart to see the sanctuary filled. I walked in and nodded at the greeters. One of them looked away a little too fast. Didn't think much of it at the time. But something already felt off. As I got to the aisle, my aisle, I saw her. A woman I'd never seen before. Tall, polished, sitting comfortably in my seat like she had always belonged there. She had on a pearl necklace, fresh curls, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She looked up at me when I stopped. And without blinking, she leaned slightly toward me and said, "They told me I could sit here." I turned to the usher. A young man I had prayed with when his mother was in the hospital just 2 years back. He didn't meet my eyes, just shrugged and mumbled, "That row's reserved today." No apology, no offer to help me find another seat, no kindness in his voice, just dismissal. Like I didn't matter, like I was in the way. I stood there for a moment, hoping someone would say something, hoping someone would remember, but no one did. So I stepped back. I walked quietly toward the back of the church and leaned against the wall near the exit. The choir sang, the preacher preached, hands clapped, amens echoed. But I didn't feel any of it. I stood for the whole service, but not in worship, in quiet grief, because I realized, right then and there, that space, my space, was no longer mine. Not even in spirit. And I knew something I'd been trying not to admit for a long time. They had already replaced me, they just hadn't told me yet. When I got home that Sunday, I didn't take off my coat right away. I just sat on the edge of my bed, Bible still in my hand, trying to understand what had just happened. It wasn't just about a seat. It was about everything that seat stood for. Years of service, years of presence, years of sacrifice that nobody seemed to remember anymore. After a while, I got up, walked over to the tall wooden dresser in the corner of my room, opened the bottom drawer, the one nobody else ever touches. And there it was. 20 years of quiet giving, neatly kept in old manila envelopes, donation slips with faded ink, receipts from the church office with my initials written in the corner, handwritten thank you notes from pastors who'd come and gone, even a few photos from youth trips I helped fund anonymously. One letter stood out. It was from Pastor Marvin, 4 pastors ago. He had written, "Sister Clarice, your faithfulness has helped build this place." I read it twice, folded it back up, then I said out loud, "Funny how buildings forget their foundation." They forgot, but I didn't. I remembered every funeral meal I prepared, even when my own fridge was half empty. Every Saturday, I skipped rest to clean the church bathrooms before Sunday service. Every time I handed in an extra envelope and told them, put this where it's needed most. That drawer didn't just hold records, it held proof. Proof that I was there, that I gave, that I mattered. So I pulled out a fresh folder from my filing box, labeled it in black pen, Church Records Clarice W., and I started putting everything in it, one by one. Not out of spite, not to prove a point, but because sometimes, when the world tries to erase you, you need to remind yourself that you were never invisible. It wasn't about revenge, it was about clarity, about finally seeing things for what they were. And honoring what they used to be. That folder, it became my peace. Because whether they clapped for me or not, I knew exactly what I had given. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Didn't sleep much the night before anyway. I kept thinking about that woman in pearls, smiling from my seat, and the usher's shrug, like I was just another old face in the crowd. But even with all that hurt sitting heavy in my chest, I wasn't angry. I was just done. I got dressed slow, pulled my coat on like I always did, picked up the folder I had spent hours putting together the night before. It wasn't heavy in weight, but it carried years of memories, effort, and truth. I didn't bring a note, didn't prepare a speech. I wasn't going there to argue. I drove down the same road I'd taken every Sunday for years. Past the same little grocery store, the same stoplight, the same bakery with the cinnamon rolls I used to bring to church events. When I pulled into the church parking lot, it was nearly empty. Just the secretary's little blue car out front. That was good. I didn't want an audience. I walked in through the side door. The hallway still smelled like lemon cleaner and old hymn books. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. I made my way to the office. The door was open, and the secretary looked up from her computer. She smiled, a little unsure, like she didn't know what to say. I didn't make her guess. I walked in, gently placed the folder on the edge of her desk, and nodded once. She looked down at it, then back at me. I could see the question forming in her eyes, but I just turned and walked out. No goodbyes, no questions, no scene, just paper. They wanted records. I gave them records, just not the kind they expected. Not numbers on a spreadsheet, not totals for tax season, but time, service, history, faith, proof that while their attention was on stage lights and sound systems, I was still behind the scenes holding things together. And now, I was letting go. That folder? It wasn't just for them, it was for me. A full stop, a quiet ending. Not out of bitterness, but out of knowing I had given enough. Sometimes leaving doesn't need a speech, just the sound of your shoes walking away. After I dropped off that folder, I didn't go back. Not the next Sunday, not the one after that. I stayed home, sat by the window, listened to the birds instead of a sermon. And for the first time in 20 years, my Sunday felt quiet, but not empty. At first, I thought maybe they wouldn't even notice I was gone. After all, it had been a long time since anyone really looked my way when I walked in. But it didn't take long before the quiet started to echo louder than any goodbye. A few weeks passed. Then I started hearing little things from folks in the neighborhood. The youth retreat got canceled. No one said why, but I already knew. The building fund hit a wall. The big renovation they had planned, postponed. One Sunday, the lights flickered during service. They said it was an electrical issue. But I think something deeper had gone dim. Whispers started going around. Where's Sister Clarice? Has anyone checked on her? I thought she was just out sick, some folks called. I didn't answer. One or two even stopped by. I watched them from the window, quiet as a breeze. They knocked, waited, then walked away. I wasn't being rude. I was just done explaining myself to people who only remembered me when the program started falling apart. My absence spoke louder than any speech I could have given. I didn't go to that church for recognition. But now that I was gone, they realized just how much I was holding together. The meals that showed up without being asked, the anonymous envelopes that kept ministries afloat, the prayers whispered in hallways, the hands that reached out before the microphone did. They had gotten used to the blessings, but forgotten the person behind them. And that's the thing about people like me, quiet givers, steady hands. You don't always notice when we're there, but you always notice when we're gone. So no, I didn't answer the door, because I didn't need to. My absence did all the talking. Weeks passed, and the church kept going on without me. New bulletins, new faces, new programs. But from what I heard, the heart of the place felt a little off. I still didn't answer the phone, still didn't open the door. But one afternoon I sat down at my kitchen table, pulled out a pen, and started writing. Not to the pastor. He'd already shown me what I meant to him. Not to the board either, names I barely knew but who always sat at the front. No, I wrote to the youth leader. Her name was Alicia. She was young, still learning, but she had a real heart. We used to talk after service when the teens would hang around too long. I saw her trying. She reminded me of myself when I was younger, always showing up, always serving behind the scenes. So I wrote her the truth, in simple words. No bitterness, no guilt, just honesty. I told her I didn't leave because someone took my seat. I left because I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. I needed to be seen as more than a wallet and a warm seat, I wrote. I needed to be seen as a person. I reminded her that for 20 years I gave my time, my care, and my heart to that church, not for praise, not for a plaque, but because I believed in community. I believed in love that didn't need a spotlight. And then I wrote the part I knew would sit with her. I left because I deserved to. And I stayed gone because I finally knew my worth. That's what it really came down to. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the seat. It was about finally realizing that no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough for people who only valued appearances. I told her to keep leading the youth with grace, to see the quiet helpers, to never forget the ones who show up early and stay late, who may not speak loud, but hold the whole place together. I folded the letter gently, slid it into an envelope, and dropped it in the mailbox the next morning. No return address, no signature beyond my first name. I didn't want a reply. I just wanted someone in that building to understand, because sometimes a letter can say what a voice can't. And I had finally found mine. After I mailed that letter, I didn't rush to find another church. I needed time to breathe, to heal, to remind myself that my faith wasn't tied to a building or a title. It was just me and God again, like it had been in the very beginning. But one Sunday morning, a neighbor stopped me by the mailbox. She said, "Miss Clarice, have you ever visited that little church on Maple and 6th? I hadn't. Didn't even know it was there. She said it was small. No choir robes, no big screens, no loud announcements, just folding chairs, open Bibles, and people who meant what they said. I waited another few weeks. Then one Sunday, I put on a simple dress and drove across town. The moment I walked in, I knew it was different. There were no greeters with plastic smiles, no VIP sections, just warmth. The kind you feel in your chest before anyone even says hello. The carpet was old and a little faded. The chairs didn't match. The music came from a worn-out piano and a few voices off-key. But you know what? It was beautiful. An older woman waved me over and said, "You're welcome to sit wherever you feel most comfortable." No pointing. No asking if I was on the guest list. Just an open seat and a kind heart. Another lady hugged me before I could even introduce myself. She didn't know my name. She just saw someone walking in alone and made sure I didn't feel alone. No one asked what I used to do. No one asked how much I gave. They just prayed with me, sat beside me, and that was enough. Now I sit in the back row. Not out of shame, but because I choose to. It's quiet back there, and in that stillness I feel closer to God than I ever did in a gold-plated pew with my name taped to it. In that small church, nobody claps for tithes. Nobody takes pictures during service, but people look you in the eye. They listen. They remember you. Not because you gave money, but because you gave time. I found peace in a place that didn't need polish, a place where humility still has a home, and I'm not sure if they know my story. Maybe one day I'll tell it, but for now, I just sit in the back and worship in peace. It had been a few months since I started going to the new church. The little one across town, with mismatched chairs and warm hearts. My Sundays felt lighter. I stopped waking up with that knot in my chest, wondering if I'd be seen or forgotten. Then one afternoon I heard a knock at my door. Not a soft knock, the kind that waits patiently. This one was firm, like someone trying to be polite but carrying purpose. I looked through the curtain. And there he was. My old pastor. He was standing there with his shoulders slightly hunched, holding a small gift bag in one hand and what looked like a church flyer in the other. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there for a moment, watching him. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home, but I figured if he had come all the way to my house, he must have had something to say. So I opened the door slowly. Didn't smile, didn't frown, just opened it. "Clarice," he said. "It's good to see you." I nodded. Didn't invite him in, just waited. He said they'd noticed I'd been gone, said a few folks had asked about me, said they missed my spirit, my presence. I listened. Didn't say a word, just let the wind do the talking. Then he said something that told me why he was really there. He looked me in the eye and said, "We could use your help again." That was the moment my heart went still. Not from sadness, but from clarity. I looked at him, long and steady, and said, "I already gave what I had. You just spent it without saying thank you." His eyes dropped. He wasn't expecting that. Maybe he thought I'd be happy to be remembered. Maybe he thought I'd jump at the chance to be needed again. But I wasn't the same woman who used to sweep floors without acknowledgement. I wasn't the same person who waited for someone to see me. He cleared his throat and said, "Well, if you ever want to come back." I nodded once, then gently closed the door. I didn't slam it, didn't raise my voice, didn't carry bitterness, just a quiet goodbye. The kind I wish they'd offered me when they let someone else take my place. Because the truth is, he didn't come for me. He came for what I gave. My hands, my time, my heart, but not my name, not my worth. And that was the part they never understood. Since that visit, no one else from the old church has come by, and I haven't expected them to. That chapter closed softly, no loud ending, just a page turned with steady hands. These days, my mornings look different. I wake up when the light comes through my curtains, not rushing to iron a dress or warm a casserole. Just me, my porch, and the sound of the day beginning. Most mornings I step out into my little garden. Nothing fancy, just a patch of earth out back with tomatoes, green beans, and a few flowers that make the butterflies stop for a visit. I hum old hymns while I water the soil. Songs I used to sing in the choir before microphones and staging lights took over. Now I sing them to the wind. No one claps, no one watches, and somehow it feels more holy than it ever did on a stage. Sometimes I talk to God while I pull weeds. Other times I just listen. To the birds, to the wind in the trees, to the quiet voice inside me that I used to hush so often. Because now I understand something I didn't back then. Peace isn't a place. It's not found in a pew or a program or a title. Peace is a knowing. And I know now I was never small. All those years I thought I had to stay silent to be accepted. All that time I believed love meant working yourself empty. I was already enough. I just needed to remember. A few weeks ago, the girl next door started joining me in the garden. Her name's Lila, young, full of questions, still figuring out who she wants to be. She helps me trim the hedges, asks about the flowers, and talks about things that weigh on her chest. I don't have all the answers, but I listen. I offer her what I once needed: quiet encouragement and a safe place to be herself. Sometimes I see parts of my younger self in her. That same hunger to be seen, that same worry about doing enough to feel worthy. I told her the truth. You don't have to prove your value to anyone. You already have it, just as you are. And when she smiles, I know that some seeds take a while to bloom, but they do bloom. No, I'm not angry, not bitter. I'm just free. Free from the need to be praised, free from the pressure to be perfect, free to be at peace in a garden built with my own 2 hands. So now, I end most of my evenings the same way I begin my mornings, out on the porch. A cup of tea in my hand, my garden just beyond the steps, the air still, the sky soft, and me, no longer rushing, no longer reaching for anyone's approval. I look back sometimes, not to reopen old wounds, but to remind myself of how far I've come. They took my seat. They replaced my presence. They acted like I had disappeared, but I didn't disappear. I simply moved forward. And if you're listening right now, if you've ever been pushed out of a room you helped build, if you've ever watched someone else be handed something you poured your heart into, I want you to hear me. Don't wait for them to invite you back. Build your own porch, your own peace, your own place where your voice matters. Because the truth is, they may never apologize. They may never notice what they lost when you left. But that doesn't mean you weren't valuable. It doesn't mean you were replaceable. And it sure doesn't mean you were invisible. My name was never engraved on that pew, but heaven knew I sat there. And that's enough for me. So if this story sounds even a little like yours, if your hands built something that forgot you, tell your story in the comments below, not for sympathy, but for healing. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if you're still holding back your truth, don't. There's space for it here. Subscribe to Granny Stories, because this porch light, it stays on. For folks like us.